The first thing Daniel noticed was the smell. Not mold, not seawater, not even rot. It smelled like someone had been living there recently. The beach shack sat alone at the far end of Broken Head Beach, 30 minutes south of Byron Bay, hidden behind overgrown tea trees and rusted fencing that looked ready to collapse into the sand. His wife had inherited it from her father years ago, but in 12 years of marriage, she'd never once mentioned it. Not properly. Anytime Daniel asked about her childhood, Ava would shut down so fast it felt like a door slamming in his face. Now she was dead, and this forgotten shack was the only thing she'd left him. Rain hammered the windscreen as Daniel killed the engine. The funeral had been 3 days earlier in Sydney. 3 days of black clothes, fake sympathy, and Ava's mother refusing to look him in the eye. He still couldn't understand how a healthy 34-year-old woman drowned in waist-deep water at Coogee Beach. Nothing about it made sense. The shack looked worse up close. Corrugated metal roof stained orange with rust. Half the windows boarded up. Sand piled against the steps like the ocean was slowly trying to bury it alive. Daniel grabbed the keys from the glove box. There were 3 on the ring, 1 for the front door, 1 tiny silver key with no label, and another old brass key wrapped tightly in masking tape, with a single word written across it: "Upstairs." He stared at it for several seconds. The property report never mentioned a downstairs. Thunder rolled above the coastline as he climbed the steps. The front door jammed before finally groaning open. The smell hit harder inside. Coffee, aftershave, cigarette smoke, fresh. Daniel froze. Someone had absolutely been here. The shack wasn't abandoned at all. A half-filled mug sat beside the kitchen sink. Ashes overflowed from a ceramic tray. A folded men's jacket hung over the couch arm, like its owner had stepped outside for a minute and never come back. Then Daniel noticed the photograph. It sat face down on the dining table. He turned it over slowly. His stomach dropped. It was Ava, but not the version he knew. She looked younger, happier, standing barefoot outside this exact shack with her arm wrapped around another man. Tall bloke, dark hair, mid-30s maybe. His hand rested possessively on her waist. They were kissing. At the bottom, written in faded marker, "Summer 2017. Daniel stopped breathing for a second. They'd already been married 5 years. No. The word barely escaped him. His phone buzzed suddenly in his pocket, making him flinch. Noonan number. He answered immediately. "Hello." Static crackled softly. Then a man's voice. "You shouldn't be there." Daniel's chest tightened. "Who is this?" A pause. "She lied to you about everything." The line went dead. Daniel stood frozen in the middle of the shack while rain battered the roof hard enough to sound like gunfire. His hands were shaking now. Ava cheated on him. Here in this shack, for how long? And why had she hidden this place completely? He started searching the house. The bedroom contained men's clothes stuffed carelessly into drawers. Recent food in the fridge. Fresh towels hanging in the bathroom. Whoever lived here had left suddenly. Maybe today. Maybe only hours ago. Then he found the medication. Prescription bottle name: Luke Harrow. Daniel didn't recognize it. Inside the wardrobe sat a locked steel box, bolted to the floorboards. No key. But Daniel already knew which key would fit. The small silver one. His pulse hammered as he slid it into the lock. Click. Inside were dozens of photographs, a burner phone, bundles of cash, and a thick envelope with Ava's handwriting across the front. "For Daniel, only if something happens to me." His mouth went dry. Outside, lightning flashed through the windows. Daniel opened the envelope carefully. Inside was a handwritten letter. The first line made his knees almost buckle beneath him. "Daniel, if you're reading this, it means they finally found me." He read faster now, heart slamming violently against his ribs. "Everything you know about me is fake. My real name isn't Ava." A car engine suddenly growled outside. Daniel looked up sharply. Headlights swept across the shack walls through the storm. Someone had just pulled into the driveway. And then came 3 slow knocks at the front door. Daniel didn't move. The knocks came again, slow, calm, deliberate. Not the kind of knock from someone lost in a storm, the kind from someone who already knew you were inside. Rain blasted sideways across the windows as Daniel shoved the letter back into the envelope. His breathing had turned shallow. Every instinct screamed at him to stay quiet, but another knock rattled the timber frame harder this time. Daniel, a man called through the door. "Open up, mate!" His blood froze. The voice knew his name. Daniel stepped silently toward the kitchen and grabbed the closest thing he could find, a heavy cast iron pan beside the sink. The front windows were too filthy to see clearly outside, only blurred headlights cutting through sheets of rain. "Who are you?" Daniel shouted. Silence. Then the voice again. "If you read the letter, you're already in danger." Daniel swallowed hard. "How do you know about the letter?" Another pause. "Because I told her to write it." The floor beneath Daniel suddenly creaked. Not from outside, from underneath the shack. He spun around instantly. Another creak followed, heavy footsteps directly below him. His pulse exploded. There really was a downstairs. The brass key, Dabra stairs. The knocking at the front door stopped completely now. Whoever stood outside had gone quiet. Too quiet. Daniel backed toward the hallway, pan clenched tightly in sweaty hands. Another sound echoed below the floorboards. Metal scraping against metal. Someone else was under the house. Then came a muffled yell, a man screaming. "Daniel!" The voice outside had changed completely now. No calmness left. "They found me." "Don't open the bloody door." A deafening bang slammed against the side of the shack. Daniel flinched hard. Another bang followed instantly after it. Gunshots. The front window shattered inward in an explosion of glass. Daniel dropped to the floor as rain and wind tore through the room. Footsteps thundered across the deck outside. Multiple people. Fast. He crawled toward the hallway while another gunshot ripped through the kitchen wall. "What the hell is happening?" he shouted. "Downstairs!" the voice outside screamed. "Now!" Daniel didn't think anymore. He ran. The hallway ended at an old storage cupboard beside the bathroom. Hidden behind hanging towels sat a narrow locked hatch built into the floorboards. The brass key fit immediately. His hands trembled violently as he pulled the hatch open. Darkness. A narrow staircase descended beneath the shack. Another gunshot blasted upstairs. Men were inside now. Daniel heard boots stomping across timber floors while someone barked orders. "Search the rooms." He dropped into the darkness and pulled the hatch shut above him just as footsteps entered the hallway overhead. Pitch black surrounded him. The air below smelled damp and metallic. Daniel fumbled for his phone torch. The beam flickered on, and his entire body locked up. The underground room wasn't storage. It was surveillance. Walls covered in photographs, maps, fake passports, cache weapons. A dozen computer monitors lined one side of the room beside radio scanners and police frequencies scribbled across notepads. But it was the center wall that crushed the air from his lungs. Hundreds of photographs of him. Daniel at work in Sydney. Daniel leaving cafes. Daniel jogging near Bondi. Daniel sleeping in his own apartment, photographed through the bedroom window. Some pictures went back nearly 10 years. Pinned beside them were surveillance notes. Routine stable. Unaware of subject, a history. Emotional attachment confirmed. Daniel staggered backwards. No. His voice cracked. None of this was real. Not his marriage, not Ava, not any of it. A floorboard creaked behind him. Daniel spun instantly. A man stood at the bottom of the stairs holding a revolver. Mid-30s, dark hair. Same man from the photograph, the man Ava had kissed. Rainwater dripped from his jacket as he stared at Daniel with exhausted eyes. "Put the gun down," Daniel whispered. The man looked shattered. "You still don't understand who your wife was." Footsteps thundered above them again. More voices, closer now. The man stepped forward urgently. We have maybe 30 seconds before they kill both of us. Who are they? The man's jaw tightened. Ava used you to disappear, Daniel, but she made one mistake. What mistake? The man looked him dead in the eyes. She fell in love with you for real. A violent crash exploded upstairs. The hatch had been ripped open. Torchlight flooded down the staircase. And then a voice called from above that made Daniel's entire body turn cold. Found them. It was Ava's mother. Daniel stared upward in disbelief as Ava's mother descended the staircase with a pistol steady in both hands. Helen Mercer looked nothing like the grieving woman from the funeral. The trembling widow act was gone. Now her face was cold, controlled, empty. 2 armed men followed closely behind her. Luke slowly raised his revolver beside Daniel. "Don't do this, Helen." "Too late for that," she replied calmly. Daniel's head spun, trying to process any of it. "What is this? Who are you people?" Helen ignored him completely. Her eyes stayed fixed on Luke. "You should have disappeared when Ava told you to." Luke gave a humorless laugh. "She said the same thing to you." Something flickered briefly across Helen's face. Pain maybe. Regret. Then it vanished. Daniel stepped backward slowly. "Somebody tell me what the hell's going on." Helen finally looked at him. "You were never supposed to know." The sentence hit harder than he expected. Not because of the words, because she sounded genuinely sorry. Luke moved in front of Daniel protectively. "He's got nothing to do with this anymore." That stopped being true the second Ava mailed him the keys. One of the armed men began moving around the underground room, grabbing documents and stuffing them into bags. Another smashed hard drives with the butt of his rifle, deeding evidence, deeding everything. Daniel looked at the photographs covering the walls again. "Ava was spying on me," Luke answered quietly. "At first, yes." Daniel's stomach twisted. At first, Luke hesitated. Then he sighed heavily. "Ava worked undercover for a private intelligence unit connected to federal police operations. Unofficial work, dirty work, deep surveillance, identity changes, financial tracking. People who needed to disappear. People governments couldn't legally touch." Daniel struggled to breathe. "That's impossible." "You think your marriage was random?" Helen snapped. "Your job in cybersecurity made you useful. Stable, invisible, predictable. You were the perfect cover." Every memory Daniel had suddenly felt contaminated. Their wedding in Hunter Valley, Sunday mornings in Coogee, the night Ava cried in bed after a nightmare and begged him never to ask about her childhood again. Was any of it real? Luke saw the look on his face. "She was supposed to monitor you," he admitted. Then somewhere along the line she stopped pretending. Helen's expression darkened instantly. That weakness got her killed. The room fell silent. Daniel looked at her slowly. "You know she was murdered." Nobody answered, but they didn't need to. His chest tightened painfully. "She didn't drown." Luke lowered his eyes. Helen finally holstered the pistol. "Ava broke protocol. She stole files connected to an ongoing operation. Dangerous files. Names, payments, politicians, police contacts. Enough to destroy careers." "Why?" Neither of them answered immediately. Then Luke spoke softly. "Because children disappeared." Daniel frowned. "What?" Luke's jaw clenched hard. "Runaways, foster kids, migrant teenagers. Kids nobody looked for properly. Ava discovered people inside the network were trafficking them through shell charities and offshore companies." Daniel felt sick. "She wanted to expose it," Luke continued. "I told her not to. Helen told her not to. But Ava couldn't let it go." Helen looked away like she physically couldn't bear hearing her daughter's name anymore. "She copied everything," Luke said, "and hid the evidence." Daniel's heartbeat quickened. "The envelope." Luke nodded. "She trusted you." Before Daniel could respond, one of the armed men suddenly turned toward Helen. "We've got a problem." He held up the burner phone from the lockbox, straw glowing. "Incoming call, unknown number." Helen answered cautiously. "Yeah." The voice on speaker made everyone freeze. "You're too late." It was Ava. Daniel's entire world stopped. Static crackled over the line as rain hammered above them. Helen's face drained of color completely. No. Daniel grabbed the phone instantly. Ava. Breathing echoed softly on the other end. Then her voice, weak, shaking. Daniel, listen carefully. They lied to you about my death. Tears instantly filled his eyes. Where are you? You need to run. A sudden sharp noise interrupted her, like a door slamming. Men shouting. Then Ava whispered something that shattered him completely. I never meant to fall in love with you. The line cut dead. Nobody moved. Nobody even breathed. Then Helen quietly closed her eyes, and one of the armed men lifted his rifle directly toward Daniel's chest. She's compromised him, he said coldly. Luke raised his revolver instantly. The safety clicked off. For one terrifying second, everyone pointed guns at everyone else. Then the lights upstairs suddenly switched on. Car doors slammed outside. Multiple engines, more people arriving, and a voice blasted through a loudspeaker from the storm outside the shack. Federal police, nobody move. Everything exploded at once. The armed man fired first. Luke tackled Daniel sideways as bullets tore through the underground room, smashing monitors and spraying sparks across the concrete walls. Helen ducked behind a steel cabinet while screaming erupted upstairs. Federal agents stormed the shack above them. Heavy boots thundered overhead. Drop your weapons! Another gunshot cracked so close it deafened Daniel's left ear. Luke shoved him hard toward the back wall. There's another exit, he yelled. Daniel could barely think. His entire body ran on raw panic now. Ava was alive. Alive. Nothing else felt real anymore. Luke ripped aside a hanging tarp, revealing a narrow tunnel disappearing into darkness beneath the dunes. Go. What about you? Luke glanced toward Helen, who remained crouched behind cover, with tears running silently down her face. I finished this. Gunfire erupted again before Daniel could answer. He ran into the tunnel as bullets ricocheted violently behind him. The passage was tight and suffocating. Wet sand pressed through timber supports overhead, while seawater dripped constantly from the ceiling. Daniel stumbled forward blindly, hearing chaos fading behind him. Then came a scream. Helen. A single gunshot followed. Then silence. Daniel stopped moving. Every instinct told him to keep running, but he couldn't. He turned back slightly, straining to hear anything through the tunnel. Only distant shouting remained now. Luke suddenly appeared from the darkness behind him, breathing heavily. Blood soaked one side of his shirt. Move, he snapped painfully. Daniel grabbed him instinctively. You've been shot. Not badly. It looked extremely bad. Luke shoved a small USB drive into Daniel's hand while they staggered deeper through the tunnel. Ava hid copies of everything, he said between breaths. Names, payments, videos. Enough to burn the whole network. Daniel stared at the drive. This is what they killed her for. Luke's expression darkened. They thought they killed her. The tunnel finally opened near the shoreline, behind thick dunes. Rain hammered the beach violently. Massive waves crashed under a black sky, while police lights flashed faintly in the distance near the shack. Luke leaned against a rock, pale and weakening fast. Daniel looked at him. Where is she? Luke hesitated. Then he nodded toward the cliffs farther south. There's an old fishing cottage near Lennox Head. That's where she was supposed to wait for me. Supposed to? Luke laughed bitterly, coughing blood onto the sand. Ava stopped trusting everyone months ago. Me included. Daniel clenched his jaw. Were you sleeping with her? Luke looked genuinely surprised. Then exhausted sadness crossed his face. No. Daniel said nothing. Luke stared out toward the ocean. I loved her once, long before you existed. But by the time she met you, she was trying to become someone else. Rain poured harder around them. She talked about you constantly, Luke admitted quietly. The way you made coffee every morning before work. The stupid crime shows you watched together. The fact you kissed her forehead when you thought she was asleep. Daniel felt something crack open painfully inside his chest. She wanted a normal life, Luke said. You were the closest thing she ever had to one. Sirens wailed faintly in the distance now. Getting closer, Luke pushed himself off the rock with visible effort. You need to disappear before federal police realize what's on that drive. I'm not leaving without Ava. You may not get a choice. A helicopter suddenly thundered overhead. Searchlights swept across the coastline instantly. Luke swore under his breath. They found us. Daniel shielded his eyes as voices blasted through speakers above the beach. Stay where you are. Luke looked at Daniel one last time. Then he pressed car keys into his hand. Blue Ute near the road. Go south. What about you? Luke gave a weak smile. Someone has to slow them down. Before Daniel could stop him, Luke stepped away from the rocks with his revolver raised toward the approaching lights. Gunfire erupted almost immediately. Daniel ran. Sand dragged at his legs, while floodlights chased across the shoreline behind him. He reached the road, gasping for breath, and found the battered blue Ute hidden beside the dunes exactly where Luke said it would be. The passenger seat contained a single photograph. Daniel picked it up with trembling hands. It showed Ava standing outside a small weatherboard cottage overlooking the ocean. The back of the photo had fresh handwriting. If you're reading this, I finally told you the truth, at least part of it. Daniel noticed an address scribbled underneath, Lennox Head. Then he saw the second line, come alone. Daniel reached Lennox Head just before sunrise. The storm had mostly passed, leaving the coastline wrapped in cold gray mist. His hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles ached. Every police siren in the distance made his chest tighten. The cottage sat alone above the cliffs exactly like the photograph. Weatherboard walls, rusted gutters, ocean smashing violently below. For a long moment, Daniel stayed inside the ute, staring at the house, terrified she wouldn't actually be there. Terrified she would. Then the front door opened slowly. Ava stepped outside. Alive, Daniel forgot how to breathe. She looked thinner than he remembered, exhausted, dark circles under her eyes. Her hair tied back roughly like she hadn't slept properly in weeks. But it was her. Every emotion hit him at once. Relief, rage, loathe, betrayal. He climbed out of the ute slowly while she stood frozen on the porch. You died, he said finally. Her eyes filled immediately. I know. Daniel laughed bitterly, shaking his head. They buried an empty coffin? A body from another case. Her voice cracked badly. The people I worked for controlled everything. He walked closer now, unable to stop staring at her face. I watched your funeral. I watched it too. That stopped him cold. Ava looked away toward the ocean. From a car down the street. Daniel felt physically sick. You let me believe you were dead. I was trying to keep you alive, by destroying me. She had no answer. The silence between them hurt more than shouting ever could. Daniel stepped onto the porch. Was any of it real? Ava looked at him instantly. Yes. How much? Her breathing became uneven. At the beginning? Not enough. Daniel closed his eyes briefly. Every part of him had prepared for that answer, but hearing it still cut deep. I was assigned to you, she admitted softly. Your company unknowingly built encrypted systems used by people we were tracking. I got close to you for access, and then Ava's eyes finally broke. And then you became my home. Daniel looked away before she could see tears forming in his own eyes. The morning wind howled across the cliffs around them. I tried leaving so many times, she whispered. But every time I looked at you, I wanted one more normal day. Daniel remembered ordinary moments suddenly feeling unbearable now. Cooking dinner together in their apartment. Her falling asleep on his shoulder during movies. The way she smiled when he complained about Sydney traffic. None of it was fake. That almost made it worse. You should've told me. I know. You should've trusted me. I know. Daniel stared at her for a long time. Then he held up the USB drive. This is what everyone's killing each other over. Ava nodded slowly. There are names on that drive powerful enough to destroy governments. Luke's dead. Pain flashed across her face instantly. Helen too, Daniel added quietly. Ava physically staggered backward, like the words punched through her ribs. She covered her mouth, tears finally spilling freely now. Daniel watched her break apart in silence. For the first time since all this began, she looked less like a trained operative and more like a terrified human being, carrying too much grief. Then a sound echoed in the distance, helicopter blades. Both of them looked up instantly, Ava's face drained of color. They tracked the vehicle. The helicopter appeared over the cliffs seconds later. Federal police. Daniel looked back at Ava. What happens now? She stared at the ocean below them, then at the USB drive in his hand. If they get that evidence, everything disappears. And if they get us? Ava gave a small, broken smile. They already buried me once. Vehicles roared toward the cottage from the road behind them. No time left. Daniel looked at the woman who had ruined his life. The woman he still loved anyway. Then he made his choice. He grabbed Ava's hand tightly and ran with her toward the cliffs as armed officers flooded the property behind them. The ocean crashed violently beneath the rocks below. Police shouted for them to stop. Neither of them did. And the last thing Daniel heard before they disappeared into the crashing Australian surf together was Ava whispering through tears beside him, "For one normal life with you, I'd do all of it again."